guys, this is Cassandra Williams from EI360. This is Fast Track Friday. Today we're going to talk about, in 2025, what are you doing for the teacher shortage and crisis? So what do we know about our current situation? We know about its impacts in education. And so hopefully through this, I can give you strategic solutions that will help you throughout the year. I don't think you need me to reinforce this, but to understand the scope, there is a teacher shortage out there. Really understanding that there's about 400,000 teaching positions that are already unfilled, right? So thinking about 1 in 8. So if you're counting your teachers on your campus, 1 in 8 teaching positions across the country. That is a ton. So it represents an increase from last year. And thinking about what are the most severe spaces, which is in our SPED, our science, and which is crucial in our math. So when looking at the root causes of the teacher shortage, okay, so we know not many people are enrolling in our teacher education programs, especially when we're talking about preparing teachers for the future. There's high attrition rates, so teachers are just not staying in the space that they are, especially in high poverty schools. High poverty areas are the ones that are tricky to staff. And then funding. There is no money and no support for funding strategies for our teachers. And last but not least, the working conditions. Things are changing. There are barriers, there are burdens, and then we have the class size. So hopefully those tips help, especially with career and school. So you know there are critical shortage areas where, of course, there's a demand that exceeds our supply. So whether in STEM education, thinking of science, technology, engineering, or math, 48% of districts struggle with the supply. Of course, SPED, right? Thinking of special education, 65%, ESL, English language learners, and early childhood education. And there's even a pinch on marginalized schools. So thinking of the impact on equity, high poverty schools, schools with majority students of color, and rural districts, and what that looks like. So being able to understand equity in a piece where there is shortage. So it is a global epidemic, really thinking about the demand for teachers globally. There's a global worldwide shortage, thinking of 69 million new teachers are needed by 2030. And then thinking about the international response and what are the strategies that are happening. Finland, what they're doing is, securing, making sure there's preparation programs that are in existence. Singapore, they're looking at what are the salaries, are they competitive? Australia, how are they targeting specific in recruiting teachers, and thinking of South Korea, really thinking about teacher status and ongoing professional development. So there is a projection growth rate, really thinking about opportunities, right? 4% overall projection, SPED, 8% ESL, 7% median salary, right? Thinking of the national median salary with, significant, regional variations. But thinking of beyond traditional classroom teaching, there's coordinating, instructional curriculum design, especially with online learning. There's post-secondary education that we're looking at with teacher preparation programs. There's higher ed, really thinking about what does policy look like, what does research look like, and even thinking about technology and the component of online learning. It always goes back to you. What are you doing? How are you recruiting and how are you retaining your teachers? And what incentives does your district have, whether it be financial incentive, alternative certifications where you are developing your own pipeline at your school, or there's mentor and support for your pipeline or even for your teachers. So one of the policies, there's several policy solutions that you are seeing happening, thinking about what are the policies that are in place. There are scholarships, whether loan forgiveness, there's retention pathways, right? If you stay this long, then what, right? Thinking of how do we have mentor support. I've even seen sometimes salary bonuses for retention. There's compensation, really thinking about raising teacher salaries to make sure they stay. And then looking at your current conditions at your school, how is that going? Thinking of, do you have a strong principal in place? Is there teacher advocacy, right? Do teachers have a voice in your school? Really being able to make change within the school system that they see are concerns. So I'd like to say our 3 biggest call to action, really thinking about what are our priorities, what are our call to actions, and what are our supports that our leaders, we want them to step in this phase. Really thinking about, for policymakers, funding. I can't say funding as much, but thinking about how do we expand our pathways for retention, how do we reduce barriers, and then thinking about, our comprehensive data systems and what are we doing to track that supply and demand of our teachers. For district leaders, we're talking about what are recruitment strategies, what are we doing, how do we recruit for our high need positions, what do we need to do for our onboarding and our mentoring, thinking about what are our career advancement pathways for our teachers, and thinking about how does the school climate, is it a great place to work? And then last but not least, thinking our preparation programs. Are our programs aligned, or do they fall short to the district next door? Are we going to be in competition with our next door neighbors? Thinking about what our clinical practice needs to look like in higher ed. Are our graduates classroom ready? How do we diversify the pool to make sure that we can have a diverse population in our schools? And then how do we partner? Thinking about what do our residency models look like, and how do we partner with schools or universities for alternative paths?